And last week, I have to apologize to Rose King because I had the computer back there on gallery view, so I had everybody's picture as part of the recording. So I couldn't post that because I didn't have those people's permission to show their names and images. So I put a link to your YouTube video because it was a great sermon. Go online and hear it. She talked about her history with the church and how she was welcomed and supported. Speaking of welcoming, our speaker today is Rev Carol Willis. Rev Carol was involved with the Unity Faith for more than 25 years, mainly serving in youth ministries. Her interest in the metaphysical aspects of Christianity led her to the Center of Enlightenment, where she has been an ordained minister since 2015. On August 18th, just a few weeks ago, Rev Carol was named Senior Minister of the Center of Enlightenment by our previous Senior Minister, Rev Keith Norton. As such, she was endowed with the apostolic virtue to guide the church using the 4 classical cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude, along with the 3 theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. I am sure she will do a great job, and I look forward to working with her for the betterment of the Center of Enlightenment. Please welcome Rev Carol Willis.
Thank you, Reverend David. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The sanctuary is almost full. Yay! I have to say that just because when I first came to the Center of Enlightenment, there were probably 6 or 8 people sitting here. But they opened the doors every Sunday and welcomed whoever would show up. And it's been a long, I won't say hard road, but it's been a road of a lot of effort to have the sanctuary be full. A lot of hard work, a lot of prayer, and a lot of love and joy. So this morning I have something that I want to share with you. I was watching the Drew Barrymore show the other day, and Drew had a guest author. Her name was Tabitha Brown, who has written a book on trying new things in life. She's challenged herself to try different things at her middle age stage of life. And so Drew opened the audience for questions, and there was a young woman who asked Tabitha this question: how do you know when it's time to let go of a relationship? And Tabitha began answering her question. She talked about your worth being happy and fulfilled. Is it fulfilling being in this relationship? Are you doing all the work to keep it alive? Then Tabitha said something very important. For the fact that you asked the question, you already know the answer. Think about that. For the fact that you asked the question, you already know the answer. We just don't want to admit that we already know the answer because it's not something we really want to hear, is it? And so the camera came back on the audience to this young woman, and she was wiping tears from her eyes. And Tabitha asked her, "How are you feeling about this?" And the young woman replied, "I think I'm already starting to grieve." Just from the mere fact that she had a doubt and there was a question, she already really knew on the deeper part of her that this relationship was going to come to an end. And she was already starting to grieve that. So today's lesson is on When is it time to let go? This question applies to any life issue, whether it's relationships, friendships, job, possessions, driving, bad and unhealthy habits, procrastination, and more. And as I'm aging, I understand more about letting things go. You know, it's time to start downsizing my house. And who knows, in a few years, I may have to stop driving. I never considered any of this stuff when I was in my 30s and 40s, but now I'm in my early 70s. And my life issues are starting to change. Life is about change, evolving, and growth. We must let go in order to move forward. And I'm not saying that that's easy, but it's necessary for our soul growth. Years ago, I had a friend for 10 years, and we were practically joined at the hip. We talked every day on the phone, and we worked on projects together. But something started to change. We were no longer on the same page. I started having the feeling of putting in a lot more effort and not getting a lot in return. I kind of felt like I was being taken for granted. I was giving and she was taking. Our friendship finally came to an end. It was time to move on. Not that that was easy. How do you just flush a 10-year friendship? Life was a mixture of grief and relief. That sounds funny, doesn't it? I'm sad to let it go, but I feel relieved about letting it go because it started to stress me out. So how do you know when it's time to let go? Number one, when we're no longer happy or fulfilled and it no longer serves us. It no longer serves us. Number two, when we're putting in a lot of effort and getting little to no return. Number three, when we're really stressed out. Number four, before I go to number four, anybody here ever had a job where Sunday night you started to get sick thinking you were going to have to go to work on Monday? Yeah. Maybe it's time to let that go. You know? I did that for a long time. Every Sunday night I started to feel ill. It's like, oh, I gotta go back to work tomorrow. So, and number four, when it's now a burden instead of a joy. And number five, when we start to have doubts and the question surfaces about letting go. You already know the answer. Excuse me, I need to get a Kleenex. Seasonal allergies. Okay. There's a story in the Bible that illustrates our theme perfectly. It's about Moses and his brother Aaron, and they were instructed by God to request that the Pharaoh of Egypt release the Israelites who were in captivity in Egypt. Moses and Aaron visited Pharaoh the first time, and he refused to let the people go. Pharaoh was warned that unless he complied with God's request, some very unpleasant experiences would come down on all of Egypt. 10 plagues came down on all of Egypt, and they were sent one after another. They were, number one, the river became blood, and there was no clean water to drink. Number two, a plague of frogs. They were everywhere and in everything, including people's beds. Number 3, a plague of lice on people and animals. Number 4, a plague of flies in the air and on the ground. Can you imagine stepping on all those flies, hearing them crunching? Number 5, a plague of diseased livestock. They all died. Number 6, a plague of boils on people and animals. Number 7, a plague of hail and fire that fell on people and animals and destroyed crops and plants and trees. Number 8, a plague of locusts that devoured everything that was left from the hail and firestorms, and they were in the houses as well. Number 9, a plague of darkness that lasted 3 days over all of Egypt. And number 10, a plague of death to the firstborn child, which affected Pharaoh personally. So after each plague, Pharaoh said the Israelites could go, but he reneged on his promise, and each time a new plague was sent over all of Egypt. Pharaoh represents the will, and we know that we can either be willful or willing. And so Pharaoh was playing this game, okay, I'm willing to let them go. And then he thought about that and said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm in power. I have control. Willfulness. After Pharaoh promised to release the people, his heart would harden and he would change his mind to no. And he kept going back and forth and back and forth. However, after the 10th plague, where Pharaoh lost his own son, did he give in and free the Israelites. Pharaoh could have said yes and stuck with that at any time, but he brought great suffering upon Egypt because of his willfulness and his need for power. And even after he let them go, and they were at the point of crossing the Red Sea, he sent his chariots after them one last time. This guy had a real power thing, a real ego thing going. Life is about change, and with that change comes a time of transition, eventually moving into a new experience. The transition process has 3 phases, and this is going to sound kind of backwards, but when we talk about it, it'll make more sense. The end, the void, and the beginning. It sounds backwards, doesn't it? And there's a really good unity book by Reverend Robert Brummett called Finding Yourself in Transition. So if you get a chance to read that, it's worth the read. The end is something coming to an end. It's the point of letting go physically because a decision has been made on our mental and emotional level to release and let go. The void is an interesting stage. A lot is happening during this time. We continue to release what no longer serves us, and we may do some grieving, but we also may begin to create a vision or plan for moving forward into a new experience. So this is an important stage. The beginning is the start of something new that we have been working for. Spirit allows us to begin again and discover our new heart's desire. And this is true every time we let go and a change comes. There's an end, there's a middle, and there's a beginning. And if you go back and think about that, you'll see that in your own experience. Sometimes there are certain experiences or relationships we want to release, but we can't. For instance, a spouse who is ill, a parent who can no longer live on their own and needs help from the children. You've fallen into bankruptcy and have to file and resolve that. You have unpleasant memories of childhood that still bother you as an adult. There is still something to release and let go of. We release the belief that these situations have power over us. If we can't physically leave, we do have control over how we think and feel about it, and how we speak about it, and how we live in that situation. We can be active and fully functioning by changing how we think and feel. Our thoughts and feelings can either raise the vibration and energize us, or feed negativity and sap our experience and strength, leaving us feeling overwhelmed and trapped. I didn't want to leave the impression that you can just leave everything, because sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can't. But we don't have to feel trapped, we don't have to feel burdened, and we don't have to feel overwhelmed. I try to tell people when they give me examples of this kind of experience, stay in love and joy. It doesn't look joyful, it may not feel joyful, but you can approach it with a feeling of joy and love and gratitude that helps to raise the vibration. And you might be surprised that it changes the experience. When is it time to let go? When we are guided by the divine within to do so. It's not always easy, but it is possible if we're willing to do the work. An important key to the process of transition is to be willing to move forward, even if we don't know what that looks like. In my younger life, I didn't like making decisions because I was afraid I was going to make the wrong one, and then I'd have to fix that. So I wouldn't make decisions, and then things would pass me by and I'd have regret and think, why didn't you go do that? And one day somebody told me something that was the best advice I ever heard. He said to me, you can't make decisions because you don't have enough information. Go do your homework, get more information. And then when you have enough information about this, you can make a wise decision on what to do and where to go. So even if we don't know what it looks like, I always say to myself, I go forward to meet my good. So I just put that out there. I go forward to meet my good. So even if I don't know what the new thing's going to look like, I know it's going to be good because it comes from God. And it's okay that we don't know what it looks like because God knows and God shows us the way. And we always walk with God. So remember to align yourself with that divine presence within you. Thank you for being here this morning, and it was my pleasure to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Carol.